In the kingdom of Fauna, the moment a royal hit their 13th birthday, tradition demanded the goddess but this one prince didn't get that kind of luck. Just before the big moment in Farnia Castle's courtyard, he got absolutely nothing, no gift, no kindness. This command calls up Theodore Ferenc III, Prince of Air. Theo was in a brutal sparring match with his maid, and trust me, this guy wasn't holding back. For simplicity, let's just call him Theo. Every strike from his maid hit harder, forcing him to backpedal and retreat. That's Leela, also called Stain, his personal maid, always right by his side. Eventually, Theo finally crumpled from sheer exhaustion, and Leela cut the Theo's face lit up the second he praised Layla, and you could tell he was blown away by her incredible talent. She was a swordmaster, whipped up mouth-watering meals like it was nothing, handled every household chore with ease. Leela thanked Theo for his compliments and reached out a hand to pull him upright as he stopped. A colossal wave of water crashed toward him. Lila yanked Theo into safety at the last second, narrowly dodging a brutal soaking. Niels Florian Fornia's second prince stepped in as the star of the whole dramatic show. Smirking, Niels leaned in and told his little brother that every royal gets a divine gift at 13. Confused by Niels' taunts, Odin suddenly got it. Then Niels was cleared up as he grandly hurled a massive fireball straight in. Bragging through the roof, he flaunted his magic with pure arrogant swagger. He mocked Theo's sword training, sneering that if powers like that existed, sword practice was totally pointless. And he pointed out that a royal's gift reflected their very character. Theos was about to hand over a gift, and the anticipation tasted like it was going to be garbage. After Niels' big display, his son charged forward, buzzing with excitement as the ceremony was about to begin. Theo's brother keeps jabbing at him, and irritation boils, so Theo tightens his fists until they ache. Leela rushed to Theo and wrapped him in a warm, comforting hug, telling him straight was absolutely about to get an insane, unforgettable gift. Her encouragement cracked a spark of hope in his chest, lifting his mood as the ceremony drew near. That night, the royal family packed into the court, taking their seats as the whole kingdom held its breath. Theophanes takes a brutal hit of divine judgment for not getting even a single blessing. As family members exploded with fury and confusion, demanding to know if he was truly royal because this kind of dread and worry painted Theos's face in full. Like the bad news hit him straight in the gut. And then Niels' burst of mocking laughter shattered the moment and made everything go from bad to worse. Amusement gleamed in his eyes, and tears sparkled there like he couldn't stop himself. Gosfornia's fourth king snapped into control the moment the kneeling started, cutting the wondering if that move was meant to humiliate him. Gos declared that the son the goddess had rejected didn't belong in the castle, then slammed the message home. Theo was no longer welcome. Niels wasted no time, pushing their father to stick to the plan they'd already talked through. King Gauss sealed his choice. He fought tooth and nail to claim Theo as the lord of the land of death. He dazzled everyone at the ceremony, and the crowd erupted in buzzing whispers. Theo tried to push back against his father's ruling, but the king waved him off like he didn't matter. The land of death sprawled as a dead, toxic wasteland nothing could grow, and terrifying creatures prowled through the fear-filled silence. It wasn't meant for humans, and Theo just couldn't wrap his head around why his father would drop him in a place like that. Right as he tried to keep arguing, the king slammed him shut, calling him a useless failure before he could. Harsh words slammed into him like a blow. And his father snapped that defying the king was absolutely forbidden. The Niel was ordered to slam his bag shut and head for. This ruling didn't just punish him, it kicked him out of the kingdom for good. Niels watched Jir grin right in Theo's face, bragging about his own plans to seize the next crown. Overwhelmed, crushed, and running out of options, Ohad had no choice but to swallow that dark, hopeless fate. The very next day, his carriage whirred to life and set off. As it rolled on, he shot one last wave to his family and friends, then tore himself away. Without his hotshot father or his self-obsessed brother around, he was totally on his own. He sank back into the carriage seat and then his stomach dropped when he realized Leela was gone. And all he wanted was one last goodbye until her voice suddenly cut in, telling him she was right there. Lost in a spiral of thoughts, Theoden snapped into action. Then his eyes caught Layla sitting right across from him, and he blurted out, shocked, "Why are you here?" Layla spoke in a calm, steady voice she'd always stand by his side. Then he warned her, "I'm heading into the deadly land of death," and begged her not to gamble. A little annoyance sparked in Leela's eyes as she straightened up, swearing to keep serving as his personal maid, swearing she'd chase him all the way down to the depths of hell. When Theo pressed her for certainty, she snapped her head up and nodded hard, zero doubt anywhere. He thanked her for showing up, and Leela lit up with pure joy finally getting some time together with him. Their playful banter kept rolling as the carriage rattled down the road. And yeah, reaching the land of the dead would take days, because they'd have to swap. But when Leela showed up, a wave of relief washed over him. But one question kept gnawing at him. Why in the world hadn't that goddess's gift reached him yet? He couldn't shake the feeling that this world just wasn't meant for him. He suddenly dug up memories of his old, boring life as a regular corporate worker. Trapped in a grind just like everyone else, he worked until the sky went dark, day after day stretching his hours into the night. And it spilled into his home life, turning every single day into the same old loop. Every now and then, he craved that old civilization-building game he used to love back in school, but work crushed all his. One day, pure exhaustion finally snapped his strength, and his body crumpled to the ground. He jolted awake in a weird new place, and a smiling goddess greeted him like, "Welcome to the divine realm." God is Vesta seized the moment, introduced herself, and then whispered the startling truth she'd found. That Theo's first reaction hit like a wave of pure disbelief the moment her words landed. The goddess offered a heavy, tearful condolence for his death, then ripped straight into the real point. She leaned in and asked, "So, do you want to get reborn into a whole new world?" She smiled and warned him not to ask why, because the gods had their own messy, twisted reasons. He dangled a wild new power in front of him if he swallowed his pride and chose reincarnation. The moment the power spark lit up his thoughts, he was right back in the game he loved building anything. He craved the crafting ability with everything he had. As a student, he told them about the game he couldn't stop playing, and then he straight up asked for the crafting power from it. Vesta granted his wish in an instant. Now, staring at the moment in front of him, Theo couldn't shake the thought that maybe he wasn't handed a. So yeah, reincarnated as a prince. He never made a thing, meaning he totally blanked on. Leyland nudged the awake, burst in, announcing their arrival loud and clear. He snapped his eyes open and froze in mortification. He'd been sprawled on her lap the whole time while Layla. She wanted to soak in his resting face a little longer, but she snapped to attention and called out the impatient. The coachman snapped in frustration, stuck waiting while they dawdled in his carriage all day. Andy burst out fast, staring down the bleak land of death. Theo didn't expect to find anyone there, yet when he saw the place, it looked dead quiet and utterly abandoned, wondering if they'd be forced to freeze outside, and Leela shot him a reassuring smile, joking that she could keep him warm with her own heat if she had to. Theoden's body heat alone would do the trick in a place like this. Leela's words stung her own heart. Theo felt the unease creep in, then it hit them both. She spun away, heart aching, because she knew she'd blown her shot, yet she also believed more chances were coming to win him over. The O wasted no time. They threw themselves into building their first shelter. Remembering his insane crafting skill, he grinned wide finally, ready to put it to use. He leaned in and demanded Layla chop down the trees right nearby. She zipped forward and carved straight through them with her sword, dumping stacks of logs everywhere as he storms off. Theo was blown away by her strength, but it didn't surprise him at all after all. She was once an adventurer. When Leela pressed Theo about what he'd do with the logs, he grinned and said they hauled the logs together. Theo surged toward the pile and triggered his power. He didn't have a clue how to use it. He hadn't practiced in ages, and he'd never even built. He locked onto the house in his mind, mapping its shape and testing its balance like it was real. The logs started rolling on their own, like something unseen had just woken up, and in the blink of an eye, a whole house rose right in front of them. Leela's jaw dropped. She stared at him, questioning where his power even came from, and at the ceremony, the ox palm was shut down, no gift for him. Layla beamed with pride and clung to her master in a crushing, tight hug. He accidentally shoved a space into her chest, and as he gasped for air and mumbled, she blurted an apology confessing her excitement. They burst inside. They gaped at the flawless wooden and stone interior of the house, so stunning that it left Leela and Wonder speechless. When Theo slipped into the captured room, he spotted the frame, no mattress at all, and instantly knew he'd need materials to build something from scratch. Layla handed over her own clothes as a replacement, and he slammed his autocraft ability into action. Theo hustled and threw together a cozy cot that felt instantly right. This so-called fix didn't even hold up. It sparked a brand new problem. Layla was left half-soaked, drenched in that thin nightgown like the darkness itself had splashed her. She sprinted straight at Theo, and he scrambled to put some space between them. But she refused to let him out of her sight, ready to shield him from anything. Even drove him into the wall, pins and all. Eventually, the oar linted, and they passed the cot back and forth like it was the only piece of comfort left. But soon he pushed himself back up, unsettled by how close she was, no matter how hard he tried to dodge it. Theo stumbled back and caught up to Leela because he had no choice left. Their first day in the land of death finally slammed shut, and Theo couldn't stop thinking about how Layla's crafting skill kept him alive. With her standing right beside him, he felt unshakable, like nothing could touch him. That night, their house suddenly started to shake like it had a heartbeat. Theo stepped outside to investigate, and then he spotted a minotaur barreling straight at him. The club rose, ready to smash down. Right as it swung, he yanked them out of danger, and the club crashed to the ground. She yanked her sword free and stood ready to take on the beast. Rage seethed when it shattered her flawless honeymoon with Prince Theo. Leela steeled her heart and vowed to take down the creature. Theo briefly panicked, then remembered her own strength. She'd already crushed monsters just like these before. His real fear was how powerless he felt. He hated that. Every time danger hit, he always had to lean on. Determinative act ordered Odo Leela to step back. Unleashed his autocraft ability. The Minotaur bulldozes through the house, ripping it apart into raw wood. Picture your weapon in your hands. He whipped up a colossal wooden drop axe in the blink of an eye. He caught the creature completely off guard. Theo slammed the massive axe down like a meteor crashing from the sky. smashed the Minotaur flat, crushing the life right out of it. Elated, Theo couldn't believe how far past his wildest expectations everything had gone. Staring into the weight of his exile from the capital, he replayed every shaky moment of the past, and then Layla sprinted to him and wrapped her arms around him so tight it felt like she'd never let go. She clung to him hard and he praised the insane skills he had. Right then, Theo snapped into clarity. This was his real calling, and the wild possibilities lit him up with pure excitement. Out in this dead, desolate wasteland, he could turn scraps into anything, and it felt like the world of the game he loved as a kid had finally come to life. He spun to Layla and blurted out that he'd finally found his purpose. When she quizzed him out of curiosity about what he meant, Theo confidently said he'd tap into his powers and use them to reclaim dead, barren land. And rip the world of the dead wide open. The wild northern edge of the Fornia kingdom. It was Theo's very first morning in the land of the dead. Forged into reality by the home they built together. A brand new day stretched in front of him, and the owner had to figure out what he'd do next fast. In the kitchen, he stared in shock as Leela dished out a wildly extravagant breakfast. And drive it into a place so dead and empty it feels like nothing can ever grow. The moment Theo took his first bite, his taste buds exploded with pure joy. Leela threw in an apology and admitted the meal wasn't fancy at all. She'd only cooked with what the cat. She slid her portion to him, asking if he was still hungry. Thea finally saw the truth: those rations were going to vanish fast, so he immediately shifted focus to the food shortage. Layla pitched the idea of starting a farm, and Theo snapped in. After they finished breakfast, they stormed outside to start their work. Theo's hype crashed in an instant the moment he realized what this was. They called that cursed place the Land of Death. The soil was so useless it couldn't grow a single crop to save its life. Layla dropped a wild rumor an old disaster had tainted the land, choking it with toxic air, and Theo didn't hesitate for a second. He fired up his autocraft ability and went right for it. He carved a stone hoe out of a stick and a rock, so he could tear into the soil and loosen it. They teamed up and threw themselves into setting up the field. After breaking up the earth, they poured in fertilizer to supercharge the ground. With their work finally done, they could only cross their fingers that it would feed the crops later. Spent and drained, the Orested slams his head right onto the dining table, stunned by just how brutally hard farming turned out to be. He fought the urge to hold it in, because he really needed to go. But Layla snapped a warning: this water was poisoned by toxic air, so they had to clutch their tiny supply and make it. And yeah, it's not just monsters and cravings anymore. The O now has to hunt down clean water and fast, or everything spirals. He couldn't help but think, yep, this place is called the Land of Death for a reason. That night, Theo and Leela shared the same cot, side by side. Like clockwork, the moment she closed in, he sprang up before she could get any nearer. But look, she was already sprinting for rest, even though only moments had passed since they'd hit the ground. He finally got it. She'd earned real rest because she woke up early, cooked the meals, and still worked the farm harder than he ever did. Still feeling like you don't measure up to Layla? He knew he couldn't stay the same anymore. He had to level up. Fueled by stubborn drive, he went to rest, ready to outwork everyone as soon as he could. As Theo's arrest crumpled beneath him, he got yanked out of reality and dropped into the exact place he'd visited after his very first. Stunned, he panicked. Did I die again? But God's vessel snapped him into calm and revealed the truth. She bowed low and apologized with all her heart for the chaos that curse set him on exile, dumped him into the barren lands, because she told him she couldn't give him a gift when he turned 13. She explained it straight. With autocraft already running, she couldn't give out any other skill. She warned that stacking too many gifts could tear a human's heart apart and send their fluids flying everywhere. She wouldn't stop apologizing again and again, like she could rewind the damage with every word. But Theo told her, calm down. He poured out his gratitude for that insanely thrilling gift. His kindness hit so hard that God blessed him, his eyes nearly spilling tears, and tried to pull him close. Theo wasn't about to get flustered by the goddess's chest, so he snapped into a guarded stance right away. Then the god abruptly stops in his tracks, snapping back to remember something crucial. She yanked at a metal bar and declared it was god metal soaked in divine power. She caught that it was forbidden in the mortal realm, but still decided to slip it into his hands as a gift. Curious, she pressed him. Was he really sure he could guard something this precious without a single slip? The goddess silenced him with a finger to his lips, whispering that she trusted. She leaned in and pressed a little bonus right onto his cheek, leaving Theo flustered. Before she left, she called the gift a tiny blessing and warned him to use it with wisdom. She sent him off with a brave wish for luck, then promised she'd always be there for him. Theo Wokencott pulled off his usual masterpiece, exactly what you'd expect from the top groomer. Wondering if he'd slipped into a dream and everything was unreal. Keisha's vivid presence hit so hard it felt impossible to doubt. Suddenly, something shifted under his blanket. Yanking the sheets off his legs, he pushed himself up. He stumbled on Leela, the second groomer, then realized she might have been hunting for something. He blurted out, "What are you doing?" before she could even finish. She blurted out that something felt solid, then she couldn't resist investigating it. The ogre was totally thrown off at first, then embarrassment hit hard when he realized he might be getting aroused. He said it was just a normal physical reaction. But the real prize was the god nettle bar. Layla pressed for answers, and the priest revealed it was a gift from the goddess. Then Layla dropped terrible news right outside. They were stunned to find the soil they'd toiled over had turned back to barren wasteland. He finally admitted that farming in this hopeless wasteland felt utterly impossible. Lay the result down again, urging them to roll the dice on fresh fertilizers and keep running test after test. Theo snapped back, saying their efforts felt useless. Then the second he remembered his vow to push harder, he grabbed the hoe and told Leela to rest. She busted her ass all day yesterday. Now it was his turn. He pushed her to drill swordsmanship until her skills started to bite. Endless talks didn't get them anywhere, so they set their sights on the right fertilizer, even as a system window slammed onto the screen. Death Soil E rank, the absolute bottom of the barrel, and it can't grow crops unless divine purification. As Layla inspected the window, her eyes made it clear she couldn't see a thing. Stumped at first, I had no idea why the soil data showed up in the first place. He replayed the goddess's keech in his mind, and it hit him. Those weren't just words, they were her divine blessing. He realized the crops were the key to finally purifying the soil, so he threw himself back into the work. Still clueless on how to cleanse it, he yanked out a divine-ranked god metal bar. A divine material so perfectly crafted that it poured holy blessings straight into every tool it touched. Theo hatched a plan, then yanked the stick queen off his hoe. Team it up with a god metal, and forged a divine hoe with his own hands. Even with that weird name, the second it touched the soil, the ground lit up with a dash. At first, it all looked exactly the same, until the danger crept in. He checked the soil through the status window, and bam, it had turned into divine soil. The goddess of grind throws a wild celebration, dancing in pure joy as the whole world feels the vibe. He roared at Leela that the divine hoe could cleanse the dirt and make the land pure, letting them finally drop seeds into the ground and start growing their own food. Layla hurled herself at Hucken, soaking in his success like it was the moment of a lifetime. But to her shock, the elite moved with effortless dominance over her. Even with her bold streak, Layla couldn't hide the embarrassment when she saw how agile he was. Theo credited Layla and the goddess, crediting them for his sudden, newfound usefulness. Tears of pure joy shimmered in his eyes as he thanked her. Layla's emotions crashed through her like a tidal wave, and she hit her limit, and her head metaphorically detonated like a bomb. This moment sealed their victory, turning barren land into fields that finally promised life. Later, Bester sank into a warm bath and watched Theo like a ghost through her crystal ball. Then another goddess, Athena, showed up, and she zeroed in on Vestus's obsession with Theo. Vester shot back that Theo's genius was crystal clear. Reshaped the god, Athena shrugged and bragged up her own hero, insisting they totally outclassed Theo. Vesta teased Athena, kept picking cute girls as her heroes, and that's why she started to look eerie. Athena shot back that she couldn't help it if her heroes were cute, and she sure wasn't about to get stuck being. While they were bickering playfully, Athena suddenly admitted Theo had real worse, saying he felt like her cute hero connected to. He cut the connection loose, but he stayed locked on her crystal ball like it was the only lifeline in the world. Meanwhile, Theo stayed up the whole night reading every document he could find about the kingdom's desperate plan. The documents made it clear the toxic air only clung to the surface, so anything deeper underground should have stayed perfectly. This was basically saying the underground water underneath was probably safe to drink. Theo crafted a hidden underground well, and after putting it to the test, the system flashed a green check and declared the water was C-rank top-tier quality. They clinked their glasses like they were sipping wine, then gulped down the water. Once the water was secured, they had to push through and finish planting the seeds, then water everything like their life. Tilling all that land felt absolutely terrifying. Mid-task, exhaustion finally crushed Theo Calypso. Layla sprinted in with water. She begged him to rest while she drove the horde forward and left him behind to fend for himself. Theo reminded her of that moment she blacked out from overworking because he knew the explosion wasn't just her body breaking down. He pushed her to rest, no debate. He slammed the warning down, overwork could wreck you. And rage boiled in the idea as Theo still had no clue how to explain all the land. And threw his wish into the sky for a tractor. But he couldn't get the materials he needed to craft one. Lila overheard it all, then blurted, "Let's call for help." Her plan was solid. Nobody in their right mind would settle in a dead, barren wasteland, and they couldn't even bring cattle. Leela pitched the OUIS autocraft to turn cattle into something new, an idea of human transmutation. Terrified, Theo blurted that he was too scared to even try, locked in over what would happen next. Theo paused for a heartbeat, then bam, an idea lit up like a spark. Choked with gratitude for Layla's spark. He chose to build the very thing they were missing. Leela demanded to know if he meant human transmutation, and he quickly reassured her that's not what he had in mind. He swore he'd build it to obey, no questions asked. A golem, he realized they'd have to gather earth, pack in stones, and snag a magic stone. which was forged with monstrous power and turned into weapons, magical treasures, or raw energy. Lila couldn't give them what they wanted, and that crushed her, so she tore her clothes off to make up for it. Theo snapped back that they already had a magic stone dropped by the monster they'd defeated. After he gathered stones and everything he needed, Theo fires up auto-craftability and forges a perfect golem. The stones grind together and boom, a colossal stone figure comes crashing to life. Leela stared in awe at Theos's creation and surged with unstoppable pride as she watched it come to life. Theo slammed the go order, and the instant he heard it, the whole squad surged forward. A sudden charge jolted Theo to the core. But instead of attacking, the golem hauled him up onto its shoulder like a parent lifting their kid. Leia lunged to protect Theo, but Theo calmly told her the gong wasn't going to hurt her. Jealous rage crawled up Leela's spine when she saw how the golems were doting on Theo. He insisted it must have feelings, even though the others swore it didn't. She claimed his one-of-a-kind crafting method was so special it could have given the thing a heartbeat and feelings. The OS snapped its attention to work and ordered the golem to speak to the soil. He snatched up the hoe and hammered through the work at an insane, jaw-dropping pace. Soon, the ground was churned into ready rows, and by afternoon they planted their soaked seeds and set everything in motion. The golem finally caught a breather as Theo and Leela dug into their dinner. O felt couldn't sit still, was buzzing for what the next few months had in store. Next morning, they blinked in disbelief. Every crop they planted out-of-season vegetables somehow burst into bloom like they owned the whole. Hadn't totally saw this lightning-fast harvest coming. The food shortage got fixed just like that. The crisis was handled. All thanks to the blessed soil, crops burst up on full sides overnight, like the land burning with curiosity about what they liked. Lila ran the side effect test, and the system window flashed back. Those crops were top. The open door swings wide like the story just kicked down the lock and starts running. Then, that flavor hit his tongue like a lightning strike. The most jaw-dropping, mouth-watering thing he'd ever tasted. He couldn't help wondering, was that tomato really a vegetable, or was it something way more than that? And he tossed one to Leela, blurted out how insane it tasted, and she snatched it up. Fast her face lit up as the flavor. The Lel was sure they'd taste even better, so they jumped in and started cooking up the meal right away. Inside, Leela whipped up meals at a mind-blowing speed. Whipping up a whole spread of mouth-watering dishes in no time. The moment they took their first bites, it felt like paradise exploding on their tongues. The flavors hit so hard and so fresh that they went silent for minutes. Every dish was crafted with perfect ingredients and razor-sharp skill, and the results were absolutely mine. Now that the harvest problem was finally shut down, Theo stepped outside to tackle the very next job. He hailed his golem, Gorm, and ordered it to check whether the materials were finally gathered. Gorm snapped a quick gesture at the pile of rocks and logs it had hauled together. Curious as hell, Layla shot a question and demanded to know what the gall was called. And Theo admitted he'd been dialing Gorm, and the second he did, it seemed to like it. Layla leaned in, studied the materials, and grilled him about his building plans. While she pieced it all together, she couldn't help but wonder if he was planning to build another house just to keep his distance. Theo had wrestled with it, and now that water was finally in reach, everything changed. He hunted down a spot to let them finally breathe and shake off the exhaustion. With his autocraft ability blazing, he made it happen. He built a blazing outdoor hot spring, straight out of a traditional Japanese inn. He finally filled the tub with bubbly soap and scrubbed up with a body sponge made from a mix of materials. He set up separate spots for men and women, sprinted straight to the men's side, and told Leela to meet him later after planning to scrub up before soaking. Theo paused the whole thing when Leela offered to wash him. Then they just kept locking eyes, then Theo suddenly freaked out. Spotting they were in the men's section, Lael snapped that there was no reason to split baths by gender, like she always does. She doubled down on being his maid and declared, loud and clear, that it was her duty to, saying she couldn't clean herself properly. She leaned in and flustered Theo to his core. So Theo snapped, but Layla refused to obey no matter what he demanded, even as his servant. When he challenged that whole master and servant setup, Lael shot back, asking if it was really wrong for them to have normal physical contact. Theo insisted her actions were completely justified. In the end, Layla won. She scrubbed him clean until every trace was gone. They kicked back in the steaming hot spring while the night finally went quiet. Lola gushed about how stunning the stars were, and Theo's face lit up with a real smile. He finally understood he'd never ever seen a view like this in his old life, or even in the capital. He was grateful for the rare luxury of those barren lands. But they weren't totally alone. Perched on a cliff, a sharp-eared figure stared down, with a long, furry tail swishing behind them. A fox squirrel gets whisked by the hot spring steam washed over, and totally captivated, because this kind of rare heat is almost unheard of for humans in this land. Theo wakes up at the crack of dawn every single day and drills sword fighting with Leela. After training, he rolled up his sleeves and worked the fields like a machine, digging through muddy, messy soil to harvest vegetables. Every night, he and Layla curled up together and devoured a treasured moment. Then he used it to steady his thoughts. Theo's life in the land of death ran smooth, steady, and somehow satisfying beyond belief. Still, one thorn kept digging. His town was booming, but nobody would show up, and he couldn't win over a single citizen. Even with a comfortable life in his hands, that still wasn't the dream he'd come for. Even with quorum counted, the town still squeaked by with just 2 residents, so short on souls it barely qualified as a village. Most people in his domain would have been granted citizenship fast, but in the land of death, that's where the rules get brutal. He was praying that the wanderers would stumble in by pure luck. One day, Theo caught faint whispers creeping in from the fields. Touching off a quick jolt of excitement, like someone had accidentally wandered onto his land. Theo's excitement burned bright for a second, then fear slammed into him when a massive beast confronted him. But when he stared at it, a strange holy aura surged out so close it felt like the goddess herself was standing right there. While Theo was still wrestling with it, the beast suddenly spoke up, begging him not to be scared yet. The terrifying beast turned to him and declared herself as Luna, the divine Fenverwool. Fenrir Spark. Theos' name sparked memories of a god-powered, giant wolf so rare that almost shaken to the core, Theo couldn't stop asking himself how he was even supposed to take down something that looked that unstoppable. Luna leaned in and asked if he missed her, reminding him, "Don't be afraid, I'm not here to battle." Then she morphed into a breathtaking woman, and Theo froze for a split second in pure shock. The wolf lady shot him a surprised grin, apologized right away. Then she leaned in and begged him to spare her some vegetables. Surprise Shu showed up for that exact reason, and when I felt nothing hostile in the air, I knew we were. Theo nodded in agreement, staring at her plentiful supply and telling her she had to take as much as she wanted. He shoved a juicy tomato into her hands, and the second he tasted it, a wave of pure heavenly bliss crashed over her like a blessing. The flavor flooded her mouth, smashing through her senses with pure, unstoppable. She practically gushed, saying she'd never tasted anything this delicious, not even in a millennium. 1,000 years back, the skies were clean of toxic air, the land fed people with solid harvests, and the crops were decent, even if they weren't exactly the best. A catastrophic war had wrecked everything, leaving it poisoned and ruined like a dead wasteland. Theo's jaw dropped when he found out the poisonous air wasn't from some natural disaster. "Curious," he blurted. "Do you live in the land of death for 1,000 years?" And she simply nodded. You teased that she might want to pack up and move somewhere else. Luna calmly told them this land was meant to be a cherished home. And even in that dead, desolate wreck, she refused to walk away. She couldn't stop smiling now that Theo had breathed new life into it. She asked his name, and he hit her with the name Theo Florian. And he poured out heartfelt thanks for the kindness and the food. The Theon sister he needed didn't ask for any reward. Luna couldn't swallow that idea pain was the kindness she needed to survive, so she leaned in, determined to make it click. Quiche rests his forehead softly. And she called in the defender's favor, her little token of thanks, the only thing she could offer right now. With a reassuring pat, she let the truth hit hard. It's been ages since she'd felt joy like this. As Luna turned to go, Theo's mind snapped back to her 1,000-year stay in the land of death. And then he shouted, asking if she'd ever thought about becoming a citizen of his domain, and Luna whipped around, stunned for a second, then grinned. Theo snapped back fast, denying he was even trying to tame the Fenler. Luna let out a chuckle, patted his head, and said it was just a joke. Luna said she needed time to think over his offer because she had personal stuff to sort out. With a bright, warm grin, she promised him she'd bring something even better to their next meeting. So I told him to brace for what was coming. Theo was watched in shock as Luna snapped back into her wolf form. She squeezed out one last goodbye, then disappeared down the road until she was nothing but a speck in the distance. Theo decided to hide Luna's secret from Leela because he couldn't risk the jealousy explosion if she found out another woman was talking to him. The next day showed up looking totally normal until Theo knew better. Little did he know, that would shatter the peace of his calm life. Out of nowhere, a worn-out, desperate woman stumbled into view. Begging for help with everything he had, then his strength snapped and he crumpled. Theo shot Layla a quick look and ordered her to grab the first aid kit. After a while, the women in Woken Theo's room started gathering. She looked around, completely rattled and unsure where she'd landed, then blurted, "Where am I?" And Theo couldn't stop himself. He just had to see she was still conscious. Asked about her health. She insisted she was fine, even if the world still felt fuzzy in her head. Then Theo stepped in, introduced himself, and told Leela, "I'm the one who's been famous outside your home." Aisha, overcome with gratitude, beams with joy the moment she meets them. Theo leaned in and demanded to know why she was standing there. "I've got to try to remember what fear did, because it hit so hard it caused this intense head pain." Theo grabbed her attention and begged her to rest. And ordered Leela to run straight to the castle and grab the healing herb to help them. These herbs are famous for their powerful healing punch, the kind that jumps in fast to treat injuries and get you back on your feet. Turning those rare ingredients into potent remedies took real mastery. But Theo's autocraft power let him whip up powerful healing medicine with zero effort. Aisha's eyes went wide when a potion suddenly sparked into Theo's hands. The moment she drank it, her wounds snapped shut and healed on the spot. Pain evaporated like it had never even happened. Aisha stared in shock at the potion's power and blurted whether Theo was a wizard or an alchemist, and Theo shrugged like it didn't matter. She leaned in and asked, "Are you anywhere near that furnace?" A fortress city stands guard, daring the deadly monsters of the land of death to come. The clarified furnace was miles out at sea. Far from the death's border, shocking Asia was nowhere in sight. She didn't even notice how far she'd wandered into this barren wasteland until the geodesic pilot's readings confirmed her worst fears. Devastated, Asha realized she'd taken a wrong turn, and now she had no clue what move to make next. Panic slammed into her as she spiraled over the people counting on her, terrified they'd never make it if she didn't strike fast. She blurted out that she was from Mo Village, right in the Veto territory. Days ago, goblins swooped in, and the helpless villagers had no chance to fight back. Goblins shoved their way in and demanded food, then didn't stop, greedily clawing for more. When the villagers protested and warned that starvation was coming, the goblins snapped and raised the demand to the app. They demanded every woman for themselves. As goblins proved they could breathe like humans, and the outcome was downright terrifying. The villagers won't budge, so the goblins grin and start threatening to execute them one by one. I should have rushed to find help for her people. When Theo demanded why she went after foreigners instead of Ito as lord, she told him she'd already tried it. No luck, just a dead end. The lord brushed off Aisha's plea like it was nothing, snapping that he had zero time for some remote village. Theo remembered how the lord of Bitoa crushed his people with brutal taxes, turning a blind eye to their suffering even as I should get ready to leave because her people still needed help, so she thanked Theo for taking care of her. But when she spun around, Theo stopped her just in time, holding her there so he could wait. He marched her into a warehouse packed to the brim with construction materials and supplies, practically glowing about how smart he'd been to prepare for emergencies. Lila spotted the stockpile, but her guts still couldn't figure out what Theos was really planning to do. Theo leaned in and ordered her to watch as he unleashed a brand new sub-ability of his autocrat, copying a video game inventory system right in front of her. With a single hand wave, every last bit of material disappeared into a hidden, invisible void. He tore through the warehouse and emptied it down to nothing. Asha froze, blurting out where the items disappeared to, and Theo grinned as he told her it was basically magic. He shoved everything into a personal dimension he forged with his own hands. He grabbed her attention and begged her to lead them straight to her village. Despite the brutal long journey, he dug in and refused to quit. Next, Theo, Layla, and Isha sprint into the road and head straight for Mo village. Asha grilled Theo about how sure he was of his choice, even as she stayed locked in on saving the village, danger be damned. Osted's firm voice hid her, telling her to trust him. Unshaken by the goblin's threat, bravery surged through him like lightning. He replayed Luna's Fender a favor in his mind, wondering if it sparked his courage, and then he put his analysis to work. The stats showed Fenrir's favor supercharged his legs, let fear snap their will in two, and forged a wild. Theo let out a quiet breath and silently thanked Luna, feeling her courage surge through him. A blade-like spike dug into his head. And Theo's rage flared when he saw goblins' helpless villagers, broken and tormented before his eyes. His composure teetered one wrong move away from cracking. He barked at Gorm to tear into the goblins, telling Layla and Asha to get ready to jump off Gorm the moment he gives the signal. At the OSQ, they launched themselves forward. Jorm crashed into the goblins like a wrecking ball, blasting several aside, and Gorm surged forward like a wrestler. In midair, Theo fired off his autocraft and built a soft landing pad on the spot. They touched down safely, but the Theo got snared, awkwardly stuck between Layla and Elisha, feeling caged between their curves. Theo blustered Isha, who bolted out of there fast and disappeared from view. Goblin hordes surged in, teeth bared, ready to smash down the moment they got the chance. Theo snapped at Aisha to stay back, because he could feel the danger piling up and knew it was too risky for her. Even with her protests blazing, Theo steadied her with a firm promise. Made up his mind he was going to save every last villager. Aisha's heart pounded because his resolve wouldn't budge, and she blushed hard, totally flustered by how someone younger hit her like that. Something new just flipped. Theo and Layla steeled themselves and braced to take on the goblins. Lila yanked her sword out, while Theo activated Autocrat and ripped open his inventory like it was magic. In a blink, thousands of blades slammed into existence all around him. Radiating the legendary aura of Gilgamesh, Layla sliced through the goblins with razor-sharp precision. And with Theo right beside them, they smashed the horde to the ground. He turned the whole area into a brutal battlefield, littered with dead monsters everywhere. Shaken to the bone, the surviving goblins scrambled away, getting utterly crushed just to race and warn their. Lee lunged to chase them, but Theo snapped her back, drilling it into her that guarding the villagers was their #1 priority. The villagers surged toward Theo, eyes shining, and the gratitude in their voices practically burst with relief from getting him back. Anne demanded, "So who are you?" With a straight face, Theo truthfully introduced himself as the third prince of the Fornicate Kingdom and the feared ruler of the land. This left Aisha and the villagers frozen in shock, their smiles turning uneasy. Theo instantly regretted blurting it out. He realized those villagers were already wary of royals and nobles, and now he wished he'd kept his title hidden. To his shock, the villagers lit up when they heard he was a prince. And she kept thanking him over and over for saving them. Theodown couldn't stop showing just how grateful they were. He kept pushing everyone to stay on guard after he overheard the goblins talking about reporting straight to their leader. Creeping rumors pointed to their hideout deep in the forest. Meanwhile, at the goblins flat out warned their leader that the village was way too dangerous to hit. And rage, the Goblin King slammed his blade down in a single swing, dropping the goblin and roaring that he was a coward for running. He barked orders for the rest of the goblins to fall in behind him, swearing he'd show those humans exactly where they belonged. Back in the village, Chief Galacmobile grabbed Theo's hands and poured out his heartfelt gratitude for saving them. Theo waved it off like nothing mattered, insisting he'd only done what was right. But the chief wouldn't take no for an answer. He insisted on handing over a gift. A stone. Layla astonished. He said it was this rare, bone-jarring metal so tough it was used only for treasures worth hundreds. A furious villager stormed up to Chief Gallagher, snapping that he'd sold their priceless heirloom, the generational treasure. Theo kept insisting he'd earned respect after he saved them. The man dug in his heels and insisted the royals would never gamble their lives for ordinary commoners. And Theo's hidden agenda lit a spark, rallying the other villagers until they finally agreed. The villagers whispered to each other, split in two, and you could practically see the distrust they had. Theosa tried to shake off their unease, while Asha Ungervain fought to stand between him and danger. She reminded them Theo wasn't like the rest of their territories, he'd save them anyway, even though he was a complete stranger. Her voice sweeps in to cool the heat in the room. Even though the villagers praised Theo's heroics, one sharp doubt about him still burned in the young man's mind. Chief Galad wouldn't budge. He was determined to get Theo that gift. But the chief dropped the truth. This village was seconds away from collapsing. Curiosity burned in Theo's chest as he demanded to know why the chief saw that brutal fate coming. The chief leaned in and warned them about the Goblin King lurking in the nearby forest, far stronger and way smarter than any ordinary goblin. Roper needs to smash minotaurs or giants, no other way to win. He was sure those escaped goblins would come back straight with their Goblin King at their backs. He shouted at the young villagers to run for their lives, then left the frail elders behind who couldn't even. Jack shot down the chief's order, insisting they all run together, while the chief snapped back that the elderly would slow the young down. Jack stood his ground and swore he'd take down the goblins himself. No way was he leaving anyone behind. Theo stepped in and offered his help, swearing that not a single person would be left behind. Aisha and the chief groped him for a plan, and he snapped back that goblins were already watching the village, so they hunkered down, beef up the village walls, and faced them head-on in a full-blown battle. Later, Jack sat there alone, seething with frustration. and he couldn't shake the feeling that Theo had something up his sleeve. Replaying his father's words in his head, how real men don't just stand strong. They guard the village no matter what. Jack thought he could step into that role and grow from it, without needing some royal like Theo. Right then, Theo Estain turned into Jack and snapped together a watchtower out of pure instinct, and it left him utterly speechless. Theo demanded more materials because his current stock wasn't nearly enough. The chief let him rip apart farming tools and even houses, and the villagers hauled their worn homes. Jack kept swinging sure, trusting Theo was a terrible idea, but he fought anyway. But Theo summons magic and slams protective walls up around the whole village. Burnt out from relentless crafting, he unleashed the collapse. Leela fretted, begged herself on, and dressed in a rush. He kept pushing him until he drained his abilities dry. With every fiber of his being, the ever-fused vowed to guard the village no matter what. His resolve started to crack, and it wasn't much, just a few jabs of doubt sinking in. Jack's mind flashed back to that brutal goblin attack, pure freezing terror ripping through him. He couldn't hold the village together while those deadly battles raged through Theo. He saved everyone, then drove himself forward, putting his body on the line to shield them again. Jack finally closed the distance, moving toward the other party with intent. He demanded to know how he could fight back and protect the village. The Ockrafter forged a spear from scratch and shoved it into Jack's hands, praising him like the village's deadliest fighter. He was basically telling everyone, if the defenses fall, you're all counting on. Jack grabbed the spear, but he made it crystal clear he still didn't trust the OE was only doing this for the bill. Even with Jack's icy attitude, Theo still thanked him. Then Jack made it crystal clear. Theo finally clocked Esha staring at him and blurted, "Hey, is something wrong?" Startled, she snapped that she wasn't staring, claiming she couldn't even see him. Then she reported that the kids and elderly were evacuated, and she asked how she could help. Theo promised her everything was under control, all thanks to the villagers. When the villagers shouted his name, he blew Aisha a quick goodbye and bolted out at full speed. Aisha stood there, stunned, and you could read her feelings for Theo clear as day. But the moment got shattered by loud footsteps pounding out of the forest. The Goblin King surged forward with his army, itching to wreak havoc on the villagers. Scoffing at how his minions shook with terror over a tiny village. He spotted the perfect opening to terrorize the villagers and snatch their women to force breeding. But his confidence crumbled the second he saw the village transformed. Villagers stormed into action, racing bows, knocking arrows, and gripping spears like weapons meant to strike. Hiding behind a fortified wall and looming watchtower, the Goblin King couldn't stop trembling. He demanded the goblins retreat, swearing they'd do no harm as long as everyone slipped away quietly. But he warned them, clear as thunder, step forward and you'd be hit right away. Rage flared the moment he realized everyone had counted him out. The Goblin King barked, and his minions surged forward like a living storm. Theo had no choice. He raised the signal and ordered the villagers to strike. A brutal mass of force smashed down on the frontline goblins. Shivering, the surviving goblins claw their way back to where the attack hit, right to the watchtower, where the smoke from the cannons billowed into the air, swallowing the sky. He slammed his fist down and declared war on the goblins. Then cannon fire tore through them, wiping out more enemies in an instant. A pack of goblins scrambles for the walls and climbs them in a frenzy. but the villagers at the top step in and drive them back with spears. A tactic was dreamed up and cooked in the strategist's mind. Theo shouted praise to the villagers, igniting their courage and pushing them to drive the invaders back, while rage boiled in the enraged Goblin King. Stunned by the sheer force of the resistance, ripped the earth open with a brutal slash of his sword. He unleashed a brutal shockwave that ripped through part of the wall and sent the watchtower crashing down. Layla snapped Theo's out of the sky. He whipped up a cushion to protect the other villagers. Then he barked orders for everyone to hit the shelter, and they bolted for safety. After watching the fight unfold, the Goblin King clocked Theo as the one calling the shots, believing that if they got rid of him, the fight would finally end. Layla yanked her sword free, swearing the Goblin King would meet her before Theo even got within reach. The Goblin King snapped to the truth. Theo's her only real key ally. With a cocky grin, he leaned in to proposition Leela, staring like he couldn't get enough of her power and beauty. But she cut him off fast, snapping that her heart belonged to someone else. Rage sparked in him after she shut him down, and he started imagining that if her beloved was killed, her heart would, ordering his minions to snatch her, fast no bruises on her face. Layla seethed with rage and snapped, demanding who he was planning to kill. She unleashed her family sword technique and carved the incoming goblins into bloody pieces. She barreled straight at the Doveland King, eyes blazing as she read the next move, but a goblin lunged in and snatched her before she could land the strike. More goblins swarmed onto Layla, pinning her to the ground. The Goblin King barked in order, freeze her, hold her down, and don't let her escape. Then she whipped around too. Layla broke free in an instant, carving through goblins and she dares the Goblin King to step up and face her. He snubbed her completely and locked his focus on. Theo gets swamped by goblins, and they block her path straight to the king. Layla realized the goblins weren't strong alone. They swarmed in numbers, so she snapped back. She realized he'd baited her with total cunning, tricking her into cutting herself off from Theo, and she roared at Theo, yanking his attention back and urging him to retreat. Gorm would protect him from every hit the Goblin King threw. She tried to lure the monster away, but Thea snapped back and refused. If they pushed on, their retreat would spell danger for the villagers. So he put his power to work, forged a deadly sword, and then marched straight into the goblin fight alone, who mocked his resolve as nothing but pathetic. Theo stepped up and challenged the Goblin King, daring him to see whether his resolve would crack, ripping a colossal stone block straight out of his inventory. The goblin casually flicked it away like it weighed nothing. Undaunted, the OU plowed through the broken watchtower's debris. With his autocrat skill, he whipped together a giant ballista in record time. He snapped off a bolt. But the goblin snatched it out of the air with effortless hands. Goblin King taunted, snapped awake, barking, "Are our games finished?" Sick of ruining his twang with kids. He hoisted his sword and demanded Thea die. Thea spotted the arcane slash in an instant. A shockwave slammed out as the blade dropped, ripping the earth wide open. The Goblin King frowned, convinced this battle had ended way too fast and with zero payoff. He froze, sensing someone lurking right behind him. He slammed a kick hard, so sure of himself, like the world was about to break the moment his foot hit. Theo hovered with his blade lifted high, ready to smash the strike down. The OE had just taken a wild gamble. He used autocrap to build a platform of 5 earth blocks under his feet, dodging the Goblin King's attack as it slammed toward the blocks. He sprang over the distracted Goblin King. This was his shot to counterattack. With a grin full of confidence, Theo felt ready to prove to Leela that his training had paid off. Leela taught them the technique, and the ostrich slammed the Goblin King's back in one fierce move. But the sword exploded into shattered pieces, slamming in with zero trace, even on that monster's brutal, tough hide. Confused, Theo got launched by the Goblin King slamming into a tree like a kicked ball. The Goblin King shot out a snide compliment, getting just a little rattled by the O for a split sec, teasing the edge of something sharper. Even with injuries screaming through his body, Theo fought to push himself back up for one more round. The Goblin rolled in ready to slam the attack, calling out a stop that was basically shouting checkmate before it even landed. Jack burst in out of nowhere, sprinting full speed and screaming, and drive the Goblin Kings back with a spear, which shattered the alarming Jack. Theo, surprise. Ask yourself why Jack threw himself into the battle. Jack told me the frontliners who retreated said Leela was mowing down goblins like they were nothing. But Theo stood up to the Goblin King alone. Theo snapped that Jack never should have shown up. Then Jack shot back cold and sharp. You would have died, fuming with rage. The Goblin King snapped at Jack, calling him a Murapon. He lifted his sword, ready to end him. Theo stepped in front of Jack, bracing himself to take the Goblin King's strike head-on. The Goblin King clocked that the human had a soft heart. Theo wasn't just a bystander. He was the real target all along. Then Theo realized way too late that he couldn't dodge it. And that old trick he pulled back then wouldn't work this time either. Luna, the Fenrir lady everyone knew, padded after Theos and kept right on his heels, throwing her a promise of help. Her Fenrir favor skill kicked in, blasting Theo's legs with raw power and supercharging his strength in an instant. Theo dodge snapped into action, blasting past the Goblin King's sword slash with brand new speed. He caught the monster totally off guard. Even with Theo swinging that blunt sword, the Goblin King didn't so much as flinch. Theo wondered how his next move would turn out. Replaying Chief Galad's prize gift rare tough metal, or Calcom. With Autocraft, he hammered it into a razor-sharp sword, and it absolutely blew Jack's mind. Whoever recalled the chief declaring that metal was their guardian deity meant to stand between them and disaster when the Chief Galad's warning hits like a prophecy. Theo steps in. With the Orcalcum sword and Layla's family technique, wounded the Goblin King, and Jack's shock hit when the monster crumpled to the ground with a brutal with his victory finally hitting him, Theo's strength crashed, and he collapsed into a faint. Jack caught him. Who broke into praise for him. Theo, please, Jack insisted, praising him for doing great too. And they smacked fists together in a quick bump. Then they bolted straight to the shelter, where Theo blurted out that it was safe. Esha bursts into a tight hug, grinning with joy while Thea Tit wipes tears as they cry. Leela froze for a split second, weighing whether to step in, watching Isha's tears spill over, while Theo wrapped his arms around her and soothed her. He said it was over, and the Lay felt jealousy was driving him. That night, the villagers raised their cups and toasted Theos's victory like it was the end of the world, but he ended up awkwardly crushed up against Asia's chase. struggling to wrap your head around how it all happened. Layla glared at the floor and she shot straight-up panic into Nisha because Nisha accused Layla of intimidating. Layla yanked Theo way close, thrusting her food into her hands like a lifesaver. Aisha fired back with her own move and a silent rivalry ignited between them. The chief mocked their wild energy, then Theo stepped in and begged for help. He shut it down. No way was he ruining their fun. Theo soaked in the village's joy and offered his thanks. Joking, he pleaded to the Lord of all of them, every single day. Fueled by inspiration, Theo slipped away to excuse himself. Built a step stool, climbed up on it, and demanded the villagers' attention. He flat out demanded they join him as citizens in the land of death he ruled. They hesitated, spooked by the rumors and its brutal reputation. But Theo fired back, saying his power was forcing his memories back and he needed their help to finish the reclaim. Jack couldn't hold back. He agreed with pure excitement. He eyed the doubters with a sharp look, daring them to fall back and stay behind even after his first wave of doubt. Aisha stepped in too, and the chief jumped in on the action as well, urging honesty. More villagers shot their hands up and screamed as Theo-like. The whole crowd was cheering for him. Their brand new lord just dropped yet another reason to throw a celebration. That night, the whole village tore into drinks and partied until the sun finally climbed the sky. Theo and the crew rolled out with wagon-ready supplies and stocked up the elderly in his inventory, then told Gorm to yank the wagon into motion. After a grueling half-day trek, they finally stumbled into Theo's barren domain. Sprawled out in the middle of nowhere, a lone house stood staring into the emptiness. Sensing the crowd's unease, awaked. He yanked the retreating villagers' homes out of his inventory, and then using autocraft to snap them together piece by piece. The plan he cooked up with Leela for their new settlement. He threw up temporary houses, fully planning to replace them later, swiftly bringing a village to life. Aisha was a living maze. Layla checked it and knew it lined up perfectly with O's vision. Suddenly, Theo buckled and passed out from the sheer strain of building it instantly. He jolted awake inside his own house. He realized his stamina was falling short and it scared him how fast it went. Aisha, now I'm made up for this. Rush in and check on him. Theo's getting flustered. Lily leaned in and told Alicia, I'm training you to be a proper maid. Recognized her raw potential. But she got slapped lightly, yet hard enough to sting, because her jealousy spilled out the second she realized he hadn't called. Dio pushed hard for Alicia to drop the formal tone and talk casually, because he swore that he grilled the locals for answers, but fear not at him that they'd hate their fresh start. Leela shot a finger at the window, where Theo spotted their loud, joyful energy. Esha's report didn't just mention it, lit the whole thing up with pure excitement. With a weight lifted off his chest, Theo finally exhaled, seeing his people happy. Staring at his new citizens, trying to figure out what move came next. Meanwhile, in the heart of the Fornia Kingdom's capital, King Goss of Scar didn't just praise foreign hero Alice Scarlet's latest feat, he went all in with admiration. Alice waved it off like it was just what heroes do. Alice Latz tosses back a sarcastic thank you as the king's words hit hard. The goddess would have, but her friends, Sama and Martina, look jittery later. They snap at her to watch her mouth and her move. The king called for a grand celebration and dropped the idea of inviting his son Theo. But he froze for a second, memories of their friendship slamming back, and he even thanked Alice for. Alice is totally confused. Then Theo steps in. The goddess cast him aside as talentless and forsaken, and exiled him to the land of death. Probably gone for good, or straight up dead. Alice gripped or unleashed her rage with the gripter sword, plotting to slit the king's throat. But Santa quickly shut her down, cheeks burning as he blamed Alice's exhaustion and cut the conversation short. San turned down the party and yanked Alice outside using some quick excuse to get her out of there. Outside, Alice snapped at Sana, demanding to know why she'd stopped her. Santa snapped that she was reckless and warned that if she took down the king, everything would be over for them. Alice raged over Theo's banishment, but Sana stepped in and demanded they respect the king. Then admitted she understood why Alice was so worried. With Theo shoved into the land of death, Alice snapped that it was time to leave the capital, no delays. He'd had it with the royal family and wanted out, no strings, no ties, not anymore. Niels burst into the room just as she was about to leave. Puffed up with his shiny new crown prince title, he waved off Alice's goddess-blessed status and sneered at her like she was nothing. But Alice, bored to tears, started to turn away until Neil lunged in, stopped her cold, and offered to make her his partner, shocking her to her core. He laid out how the first prince vanished and how Theo got banished, then boldly crowned himself as the next king. And he chased the dream of Alice earning the people's trust, swearing that her power would shield her from an endless pile of brute. Alice burst into laughter, skewering Neil's arrogance to pieces as she laid out her doubt started gnawing at his kingship. Heck, he knew how to honor her protective role. She refused to marry a pompous fool. And he'd always stand by Theo, pointing his finger at Niels and claiming he was behind Theo's exile, seeing the king as nothing but an enemy. Alice's words detonated pure rage and he dropped to his knees. Who bolted toward what made Theo's popularity explode. Unleashing his magic like a thunderclap, he demanded to know if Theo was even worthy. Martina's jaw dropped when Neil unleashed a mountain of magical power. Alice leaned in and asked, "So this is your gift?" Neil started boasting about his insanely powerful sage ability. He brags he's got limitless magic and total control over every element, insisting no one can ever. Alice sneered at the way his ego swelled like it owned the world. And when he demanded they kneel, he hurls a lethal jigger fire spell and it burns like a death sentence. Alice sliced straight through the fireball like it was nothing, noting how totally untrained Neil was. Before he even had a chance to react, she smashed him with a brutal sleep hit, and he went tumbling head over heels. Neil seethed with fury as he threatened retribution for striking down the prince. But Alice handed the task to Martina. Alice's impulsive choices snapped into the moment, and they instantly healed Niels. Like Alice taunted Niels, firing shots with, "So what'd you do?" And the second she dared him to confess his rejection and swallow his defeat. Right there. In a journal. He cranked the dial to the edge of breaking. Neil swore he'd crush Alice and Theo with despair, and Alice just grinned. Then he pushes Sana and Martina through the exit, dragging them out of there. He was laser-focused on finding it right away. Meanwhile, Theo fired up his autocraft and forged brand new farming tools. The grateful farmers wrapped up their hard fieldwork and rushed to thank him for his help, but Theo just waved it off, urging them on and wishing them. Then he asked Layla if anything was left to do, and Layla immediately pointed out that the village. Aisha burst in with a basket and called out sheep-made sandwiches fresh and ready for every field worker. And Theo shot her. Now the land of death was buzzing with life again. Everyone had a job, and together they surged in to rebuild it. Grinning, he pushed to level up the land even more, banking on their support to make it happen. Suddenly, warning bells blared, and the village screamed that a giant wolf had started tearing through its people. Theo shot forward the moment he recognized the wolf, shouting as the villagers grabbed their weapons. The wolf pushed them to drop their weapons and swore she wouldn't hurt them. The arrive burst into joyful cheers, confirming it was Luna. Finally, after all that waiting, she exhaled with relief the moment she saw him. Smoke swirled. Luna ripped through her transformation and burst into her full humanoid form. Clutching Theo tight against her as she sped into the chase. She said he looked rock solid, and she just knew he'd slip out of danger by the skin of his teeth. Theo swallowed his pride, faced his struggles head-on, and demanded to know why she showed up. Surprised, Luna couldn't shake the feeling that she'd somehow forgotten to mention her promise of an even better gift at their next meeting. Theo eyed her warily in the bright daylight, ready for trouble. Brace yourself, Luna's finger slid under his chin. Leaning in for a quiche just before she could. Layla shot forward and caught the sword meant to cut down Luna, demanding she back off and keep her distance from Theo. Luna clocked the blatant hostility in Layla's eyes. Luna got hit with a nasty accusation. Layla claimed she tried to steal a quiche from Theo, more valuable than any treasure, and demanded. Theo stepped in, shouting that Luna was the femver heat mat while Layla was asleep. But as tensions kept climbing, Luna's restlessness surged until she had to speak up and make everything crystal clear. Luna stopped messing around and finally spilled the truth: her keys. Was on a mission to win back her Fenrir favor. Previously, a forehead quiche got handed to him. She kept it just small for Theo's body, gave it time to settle, then leaned in and said, to repay this favor, Layla, still not convinced, blurted out. So those were really Luna's last words. But Theo shot her a warning to drop her weapon, and Layla snapped that Luna had stained Theo's purity. Luna finally clocked just how jealous Layla was. Layla blushed hard and flat out denied it, claiming she only protected Theo, but Luna T sees Lufbier stumble when Theo's first quiche is taken, urging her to hand over her own favor to him. Shocked out of their minds, Theo and Layla grilled her with burning questions. And Luna made it crystal clear Layla could actually pass her own blessing onto Theo. Layla hesitated, not sure she could even share her power, and Luna shot back with the truth: yes, it was possible. Noting Layla's earlier sword strikes, I'd swear no normal human could match that kind of strength. Luna revealed that a rare breed of humans chosen by divine favor can pass their power straight to someone else. I mean, Layla's ready to spill hers with Theo. Luna snapped back with a quick lip kiss plan right away, because since they were both human, there was no reason to wait. He kept pushing Layla to move fast, not caring who went first. Theo stepped in hard, demanding why they'd just assume he'd choose Keshla, and Luna shot back, asking if he even had a. They fought the urge to act recklessly, because that tangled rush of emotions wouldn't let them move on impulse. Leela was ready to quiche Theo the moment he showed up. Luna teased her eagerness to the max, and Alicia blushed as she nervously fired off a question to a crowd. Theo begged Lila to not feel pressured. But she poured her heart out, begging for his affection, if he was ready to give it. Layle's hands are trembling like crazy, while Theo stands there, frozen after hesitating. Yeah, he swallowed his pride and admitted this was his first quiche, and the godly warmth pressed against her cheeks, fumbling in an awkward kiss with her. Still staring at the favor transfer he just yanked back, wondering what it meant. Confusion hit hard when Layla never replied. Then she gasped in shock and dropped into a faint. Everyone froze in shock except Luna. She erupted into laughter, and Layla had her completely losing it. With a wicked grin, Luna snapped, "My turn next." But had to wait until Layla's favor calmed down so Theo wouldn't get hit with too much all at once. When her plans got crushed, she pivoted to something else right away. He shouted for the kids to come closer as Wolf, after barking like a firecracker, he barrels in and greets everyone loud and proud. Surprise shot through Theo as he demanded to know about the wolves. Luna stepped in and made it crystal clear those fender pups were the ones she wanted, not her sisters. Teasingly, she pressed Theo, asking if he'd finally found a partner. Then made it crystal clear she was still clarified didn't care, shut Luna's warnings down, and still agreed to watch over those rare, trouble-baiting pups. With a gentle hand on the pup, Theo leaned close and promised Luna, "I'll welcome you both, no question," shattering her expectations with his lightning-fast call. Luna blushed and thanked him. Teaching the pups to thank their new caretaker, Theo, with grateful hearts. Worm Theo is the kind of pup that raises eyebrows fast, lapping at him until he got swallowed up in their fur. A week later, the pups will be happily having a blast with the villagers, tossing toys with the kids and munching on hard-earned farm food. Asha served them food, but Theo got swamped. Those cuddly licks wouldn't let up. Watching, O felt that sharp twinge of jealousy hit hard. But he caught one pup staying off to the side, crouched and hiding the moment his gaze landed. Loon burst onto the scene and told everyone that the pooch's shyness wasn't a problem. It was really the Theo was hit with an instant shock. She popped up out of nowhere, draped in a brand new outfit that absolutely stole the show. Luna insisted she wanted to wear next to nothing. But Theo snapped back that it just wouldn't fly in the village. When Theon finally learned about how bad the pub was back then, Luna leaned in and told us it was the youngest. And she broke down, telling everyone about her older sister's heartbreaking death right after Theo froze when Luna revealed the truth. This pup had never once felt a mother's love. Even after her best attempts, Luna finally confessed she could never truly take the pup's mother's place, which left the pup shrinking back, staying distant from everyone until Theo nodded finally cracked. Luna looked like she was about to drop the next bombshell. Theo Keaton steps in and offers the pup a real friendship. Luna froze mid-breath, utterly stunned. Reeling from Theos's offer, he felt the heat rise and he feared it was about to go too far. Luna flashed him a quick smile that instantly reassured him, like she'd just found the exact. Theodown showed his worth and made it undeniable. Then Luna blindsided him with a hard-hitting quiche. Theo got slammed out of his balance when Luna yanked his chin in a tight grip. Once Luna finally stepped back, Theo went red-faced and blurted, demanding to know exactly what she was doing. She shrugged it off, saying she was just keeping a promise she made earlier, a favor they both. Then Luna leaned in and told Theo to keep an eye on the shy little pup. Even with doubt gnawing at him, Theo promised himself he'd give it everything he had no matter what. Odin hesitated before stepping toward the youngest pup, then tempted it with an invitation to play, but it skittered away, keeping its distance. He clocked that it didn't run all that far, like it wasn't actually scared at all. Theo kicks off a tag game and volunteers himself as the target. Hit me. The little pup looked up and somehow understood everything. He barked and darted away, playing like he couldn't sit still. Grinning, Theo sprinted after the pup, chasing it through the whole village. Even though it was tiny, that fender pup sprinted like lightning. Spotting its fennel in the wild, Theo got clenched his jaw and leveled his autocrat skill in full seriousness. Summon an earthen wall to slam shut the path in its way. He lunged for it, reaching with everything he had. But the pup shot over the walls in a blur and scrambled across the rooftops like it was born for rooftops. Theo refused to quit, slamming up even more walls to pin the pup down. But it always slipped right past them. Theo started clawing his way back, step by step, until he finally seized the upper hand. And the pup couldn't stop its grin from breaking through. An hour later, Theo was bent over, gasping for breath like he'd run through a storm. The pup skidded to a stop. He barked at him with a huge grin, tail going a mile a minute, loving every second of the chase. The obolated snapped. Relax, this is where the real game kicks off. The chase kicked back into gear until the pup slipped right off the rooftop. Sensing danger brewing, Theo snapped his autocrat skill into action to slam a trampoline right underneath. With Fenrir favor fueling him, he sprang off the trampoline like a rock, snagging the falling pup right out of the air. Then he whipped up a plush cushion to cushion the impact and make sure nothing broke on the landing. They crash-landed and somehow everyone walked away unhurt. Then Theo triumphantly caught the pup and announced it. The Fenrir pup barked and puffed up his face, pouting like someone had seriously disappointed him. Theo couldn't shake the feeling it wanted one more round. Then Luna popped in, beaming hard. Thrilled that the pup had finally, they dubbed him a natural fennel charmer. Puzzle. Theo shot back that they'd just become friends. Luna beamed with a warmth that felt like a hug. Watching them cuddle on that cushion then, right after, everything changes. Theo played with Soak, one of the Fenrir pups, because those little troublemakers didn't get names yet. Luna handed Theo the job of naming everyone, and the moment she did, she lit up. Fueled by inspiration, Theo watched as Leela put the villagers through their paces. She was ripping through the drills, flinging them around with brutal control. He hammers home the message: keep pushing, become better soldiers in the moment they fall. It's like he's right there, driving Theo couldn't shake the gut feeling that his maid was being way too harsh for comfort. So far, the village had managed to dodge any real monster damage. A few people closed in on Alila, the soldiers, and Theo's Gorm until Gorman snapped them back and shut it. Still, the O'Neill couldn't drop his guard for even a second. Determined to shield the village at any cost, he unleashed his autocraft skill and hauled up solid walls around it. Theo was itching to finish his brand new weapon, but he was missing a few key materials he couldn't do without. That evening, after he finished his bath, he stormed back to his room. Please, he built the sauna everyone adored. He was weirdly delighted that Gorman loved it the most. Seeing the villagers light up made his. Soon enough, Layla burst into Theo's room. He praised her grit, calling out how hard she pushed the villagers to train every day. Anxiety knotted Layla's face as she thanked him, like she'd just barely found the courage. Theo grew concerned. Realizing she'd been acting distant ever since kishing him and then fainting. Right after Layla swallowed her pride and apologized for what happened in that moment. That over-reassured rush might have sounded risky, but it wasn't foolish at all. Layla suddenly closed the distance, grinning as she explained she'd been drilling her mind for one goal never failed. Layla grabbed Theo's wrist and demanded, "Can I pay you back for the favor you gave me?" Confused, Theo just stood there while she drilled Luna's advice into him: start with the small favors first, then go out. Seeing Layla tremble sends a chill through everything. Theo noticed her pushing herself and gently told her to slow down. He couldn't wait to show her how much her feelings meant to him. Layla's restraint shattered into nothing. She insisted she'd move fast, then pointed the finger at Theo for everything that was about to hit. Before he even got the chance to explain himself, Layla Kishtem cut him off. Overwhelmed, Theo couldn't help but feel her kisses on him keep pouring in. Gently shoved him down onto the cot. She poured every ounce of love into relentless passion, never letting up on the Kisias. Not pausing. Next morning hit, and Theo was completely drained. Layla practically fizzled with energy, then joyfully jumped right back into training the villagers. Theo decked out to check the crops spread across the fields. There he spotted a stranger stepping up to ask if he could taste the vegetables. After one bite, the man with animal-like ears blurted out in French that the flavor was absolutely delicious. He lit up, called the vegetables sweet and bursting with juice, and offered to buy them on the spot. Curious as he was, he couldn't stop wondering what this was leading to. He was locked in on a nearby Fenrir pup. The stranger mused, eyeing the pup's fur like it was worth a fortune. Rage flared as the Okan charged him, snarling, "So what do you plan to do with your friend? And you'll demand to know who he is." The stranger introduced himself as Lauren from the Bastia Company. Then, without warning, Lauren whipped out. Right then, Jack burst onto Gorm's back and snapped that Lauren was trespassing. Lauren insisted through clenched teeth that he hadn't done a single wrong thing. Lauren said it felt insane to see farmers working in the land of death, a place that was supposed to be nothing but. Gorm's arrival was a dead giveaway. Some gifted alchemist was hiding in that place. Lauren stared at the village like it was a treasure map and blurted out that he had to dive deeper. Right then, Theo snapped a magical cage around Lauren, ready to grab him and hold him there until he could read what he really meant. Lauren's jaw dropped. She was genuinely impressed by the cage's one-of-a-kind magic and texture. Watching Gorm the Fenrir pup, the crops, and Theo's magic, Lauren looked at the village and swore it was pure He even thanked the gods for his luck. And that's when Theos's suspicions went off like alarms. He started grilling Lauren about what she was. Right then, the villagers stormed in, screaming terrible news. 10 earth dragons were barreling toward the village and they'd slam through in just 20 minutes. Theo froze in shock. One earth dragon already felt like too much. But 10 at once was unheard of, even in the whole land of the dead. Warren snapped to life and spoke out of nowhere, panicking that the earth dragons were hunting him since he'd barged into their nest. The opposite together, quick, quick. Lauren admitted those dragons could be tailing him. Theo froze in shock. This wasn't just a trespasser in her village, he dragged a pack of deadly monsters straight. Theo couldn't stop thinking about what new disaster this guy was about to unleash next. Earth dragons didn't fly with wings, but they were built like tanks, the toughest of their kind. Theo couldn't believe Lauren had summoned those beasts right into their home. Then Warren insisted it wasn't supposed to happen, claiming he just peeked into their nest and never saw them come charging after him. Still, he bragged through the roof about outturning them, calling it a wild game of tag and swearing it was downright impressive. But Thea remembered how earth dragons were usually calm tending fields and hauling heavy loads, so it felt Thea suspected it wasn't just Lauren's actions, there had to be way more to the story. Still, he commanded Lauren to stay locked in the cage while the village fought the dragons. Warren begged them not to leave him there. Meanwhile, a list of guides herded the villagers into an underground shelter. The news that 10 earth dragons were coming sent everyone into pure panic. Isha leaned in and reassured them, pointing out just how fortified the village was, way strong. She swore their soldiers trained hard every single day, and she fully trusted Theo, and preparations began. Theo's watched the earth dragons close in from a distance, barreling straight toward the cannon's firing range. Luna burst in, ready to lend a hand. So Theo thanked her, then pulled her aside and told Leela to hold off for now. He knew it would be suicide to throw their top fighters in right away. Worried that the toxic air had somehow supercharged the monsters. He also wanted to see if the cannons could actually halt them, rallying the soldiers and blasting their morale sky high. A villager screamed that the earth dragons were out of their league. Theo barked orders to his troops, demanding they get ready to open fire the moment he shouted. Cannons blast together in a thunderous roar, shaking the whole battlefield. He cannonballed forward with a sword swing and slammed it straight into the monsters, rattling the ground like it's about to split. Theo let out a breath of pure relief, because they nailed their mark. But the earth dragons pressed on with unstoppable determination. Theo stared in shock. Turns out the beast didn't slow down at all. He fired questions that tested just how tough they really were. The soldiers' nerves snapped tight, convinced those cannons wouldn't fire right when it mattered. Even Theo felt a knot in his gut, thinking about calling Leela and Luna, but he hesitated, terrified that their thick armor could make things worse. Theo was convinced his half-built weapon could tear through the dragons. But it still didn't have the ultra-high-grade magic sight it needed to work at all. He'd have to wrench that treasure out of a dragon first. Then Lauren dropped the bombshell. He actually had the dragon majesty Theoneted. Theo jolted when he saw him slip out of the cage. Lord couldn't ignore his curiosity, so he broke free, desperate to grab Theo's gong and feel it in his hands. Theo demanded, "Be honest, do you really have the magic sight?" Lauren casually showed it off. He even handed over a certificate to prove it was the real deal. Theo used his appraisal skill and confirmed right away that it was the real deal. Still, he couldn't shake the question, why on earth did Lauren have it? Lauren sheer figured he could swap it with the elves and rake in a nice profit. Thea stared in confusion. So Lauren spilled the rumors about elves and some northern village hiding in the land of death. He chased the idea that he could track them down and cash in big, but the village stayed nothing more than a legend. Lauren clocked the opportunity and poured her money into Theo's village, what he called a real-life gold mine. The O card means something. Lauren offered up the magic site if you want to see more videos like this. Theo stood between danger and the village, then sealed an exclusive pact with Lauren's Bastia company, and Lauren wasted. He figured Theo would need a minute to think, but Theo said yes on the spot, no hesitation at all. He saw the magic site as their last lifeline, and he figured teaming up with this outsider could save the village, but even then, he still didn't fully trust Lauren. Theo could feel this deal was about to blow everything wide open. Warren froze for a split second, like the world just hit pause. Theo locked it in as he accepted the deal and gripped Theo's hand to seal everything. He finally owned up. He'd misread just how decisive the O's really were. Lauren pressed the magical site into his hands. Theo's brand new magic cannon fit perfectly, and the moment he saw it, pure amazement hit him like a blast. The second he saw that magic-powered weapon, curiosity slammed into him. He just had to know how strong it really was. Theo skipped every test that involved it and used it right then and there. It felt so unstoppable, like it had finally beaten the usual cannons for good. With one single button press, the magic cannon screamed out a blazing real wind light blast, smashing into the oncoming earth. A massive blast detonates over Gulf Theoria, shaking everything to the core. The blast hit so hard that even Lauren couldn't help but flinch. Who stared in awe. The O2 was left absolutely reeling by just how brutally powerful it was. A villager flat out confirmed the Earth Dragons were completely wiped out, sparking celebrations. Aisha and the evacuated villagers froze, then heard the cheering erupt in the distance. He finally felt safe again. But when the dust finally settled, countless wyverns burst out, one after another. Theo snapped a harsh glare at Lauren. She could tell he wasn't to blame. If it wasn't Lauren, Theo couldn't shake the feeling that something was brewing in the land of the dead. A darker problem closed in. Those magic cannons had to recharge, and regular cannons couldn't stand up to the wyverns. Layla and Luna charged forward. They were itching to fight, convinced it was finally their moment, so they stood their ground against the wyverns, calm as ice. Layla blurted that it felt like forever since she'd fought those dragon-like creatures, and Luna confessed she hadn't even broken a sweat lately. He looked back and felt real gratitude, because earlier, he'd kept them right there by his side. He told him to hold steady against the wavering without burning himself out. Then the magic cannon would roar back to life in just 10 minutes. He even barked orders at the soldiers to get the other cannons ready. Warren fidgeted and demanded to know if Thea realized just how many wyverns were swarming out there. He shoved urgency into their chests and demanded they run for their lives. Layla and Luna grabbed his attention and told him to stay calm. swore he'd wipe out every single wyvern in the next 10 minutes. They burst off the wall and launched into the air. Luna flipped her hands into fender or paws. Layla yanked her sword free and raised it high. O told Lauren that wyverns were deadly on the wing. Shark claws shredded, teeth bared, and fire breath unleashed. But he made it clear they had an extra rank adventurer in their corner, plus a fender with them, backing their... Layla and Luna tore through the wyverns, mowing down almost all of them in a flash. Theobost made them the village's fiercest warriors. He learned it the hard way, then watched Ostrup take the hit. Soon the final wyverns dropped like lifeless insects fell. Luna's patience snapped a little because it took way longer than she'd expected. Lila cut down another wyvern and that made Luna's loss feel even worse. We cornered our words and complained about Layla's ruthless competitive streak. She swore she didn't care about becoming the prince's main wife. Yet Leela totally froze up, stammered. Then Luna grinned and threw herself into the fight, demanding more weapons without ever going all out. Leela fired back. What do you mean? Fresh doubts surged in from a whole other direction. The overstand. Even Luna sensed something was off in the land of death. They were so far from the village that there was no way they could make it back in time. Theo, panicked to the core, barked the order for the regular cans to fire. But their shots just couldn't land on the enemies flipping through the air. The magic cannon still hadn't fired, its power was stuck on, not yet. Just as Theothod vanished. Then a juror stepped out of the shadows, grabbed his attention, and told him to hand the whole thing over to her. With one brutal sword swing, she split the wyverns clean in half like it was nothing. Everyone, especially Theo, went completely wide-eyed, stunned to the core. As you finally clock her technique. Girl faced Theo. And yeah, it had been ages. Alice, Theo's relentless searcher, finally stepped into view and revealed herself. Theo shot her a question. Why are you here? And she admitted she'd heard about his banishment, then figured he must be lonely and hurting. Theo clarified wasn't shedding a single tear. He just turned to her and thanked her for worrying about him. Alice shot back that she hadn't come out of fear at that moment. Then Layla and Luna burst in, and everybody turned curious. Layla's jaw dropped the second she saw Alice. And just like that, Alice stared in shock because Leela looked just as stunned. Alice's help filled him with fresh gratitude. Then he stepped toward O. He offered to take the trouble that was meant for someone else, because if he didn't wipe out the wyverns, he'd be forced into humiliating thing. Oh, hurry! Lee snapped her to a halt, then swore she'd already done more than enough. Right before pushing Leela to change back, Lunar lunged in and hugged Theo. Laughing, she cheekily demanded a reward for everything she'd done. Yo, it's Shep here. Theo stepped in, and he wrapped him up in gratitude, thanking him for keeping everyone safe. Alice froze on the spot when she noticed two more Jurls looming right beside Leela. She spun her gaze around and caught a whole village alive with noise, crowds, and people moving everywhere. Crushing her plan to comfort a lonely Theo. Alice crumpled to her knees and Theo snapped, "What's wrong?" Later on, she slipped into the village hot springs and soaked until the heat chased all her worries away. As thunder rumbled in her chest, she realized her dream of a simple, joyful life with Theo had been shattered. Martina was done with Alice's non-stop complaints and then San Hustler. Alice told him she'd risked everything to reach the land of the dead only to have her hope yanked away. Still, the girl stumbled on a surprisingly cozy bath in the land of death, and it blew. Marina called it the biggest shock of all. No one in their wildest dreams would guess the banished princess had that kind of talent. Alice didn't even flinch. She already knew Theo's autocraft ability. Then she admitted she hadn't told them before, revealed she remembered him whispering his secrets to her back when they were just kids. Once everyone was in on it, she stopped tiptoeing around the truth. Finally let the secret. Then Layla showed up, wide-eyed and shocked because Alice had known Theo's secret the whole time. Alice clocked Layla's reaction and realized Layla had no clue. Gleefully, Alice teased Layla strutted in, bragging that Theo trusted her the most. After their bath, the three girls slip away, only to not be caught. They complimented their looks, right as the arrive took them in. Alice demanded, "Did you finish collecting everything?" And Thea shot back, "Yeah, done," leaving the girls staring in shock at just how much they had amassed. Alice didn't even blink. She figured the land of death would still spit out more than enough. But Theo had asked about the open-air bands, and Alice lit up as she said they were absolutely lovely. When Alice looked at Theo, she gasped. He'd shot up since the last time they'd met 2 years ago. She thought he'd look crushed, but instead he practically crackled with raw energy. The Oakenfest was terrified of being banished at first, but once he survived in the land of death, it turned out Alice remarked he looked way healthier than you'd ever seen her in the capital. "Theo, please." Alice had somehow gotten even prettier. She flushed on the spot, scolding him for getting cocky just because he'd grown. And Theo swore he was only. Santa cut in right there, saying Alice wasn't anything else, she was just painfully shy. When Alice heard Theo was banished, panic hit like lightning. She lost control and sprinted straight. Alice crashed into Arena's face and instantly fell asleep. Santa snapped at Theo to stop her from saying things like that, then kept right on telling him how Alice's actions had brought all. Even as Alice begged him to stop, Santa still went on talking about how Alice had actually punched the needles. Arena dragged a stunned Alice through unimaginable trouble. She could tell Alice had Theo in her heart, and Theo admitted it too. Just aware of every danger, Alice snapped and admitted she couldn't rein it in, pure fury burning as Neil mocked her. Theo's face warned, and he slipped his hand into Gallus' thanking her for throwing down and defending him. Shy to her bones, Alice blurted out, "Why are you holding my hand?" Marina and Santa erupted in cheers, egging Alice on to Kashim. Alice glares at Theo, her anger snapping like lightning as she squares up. "And you clock it," she's not playing around. Right as the whole thing was peaking, Pretender was about to react when Lauren swooped in and demanded their attention. Theo gasped when he saw him, because the guy was tied up and all bound tight. Theo blurts out, "What happened?" the second it clicks. Lauren explained how the villagers pointed at him like it was his fault that earth dragons came sniffing around, and they basically demanded he make it. Lauren pivoted on the spot, pushing a bold plan to sell the dragon materials in bulk to the Bastia Company. Allison blew up in excitement, laying out exactly why dragon materials were worth their weight in gold. Armor forged from tough, unbreakable scales, claws, and fangs turned into savage weapons, and Lauren had already done the math. The guy twisted in midair and smashed down in the Bacchus. He kicked in his foot to finish the figures. He slapped the total down on the table and swore it would cover the cost of the materials. Alice, trembling, insisted that the money could rise into grand mansions by the dozen, then Lauren shot her down. Thea finally spilled his plan. He'd sell off only half the materials. Alice froze, then listened hard as Theo admitted he'd gathered way more. Lauren tossed out a bigger offer, but Theo shut it down. He stuck to the standard rate and traded for it. Theo went digging for materials, racing to spend every last bit of the remaining money. Warren's jaw dropped. Nobody expected Theo so young to sniff out the currency's fatal weakness in the land of death. Lauren grabbed the offer, and Theo made it crystal clear he needed iron. Their argument got cut short when Alice's stomach let out a thunderous growl. Blushing hard, she confessed she hadn't even touched a bite on her way to Theo. Theo was starving. He clocked it. The food was probably ready right now. When Lauren asked, Theo snapped, "Come with me," and told him they'd get to chow down on dragon meat. Theo kicked off the victory feast by lifting his mug high, like he was celebrating a win that felt unstoppable, as the crowd roared and cheered them on like they couldn't lose. Aisha and Layla burst in with the banquet's main dishes, ready to steal the spotlight. They chopped up dragon meat and laid out a feast of dishes that looked less like food and more like stolen treasure. The villagers couldn't wait to sink their teeth into dragon meat, and their mouths watered non-stop at the feast. Theo took the first bite and led the whole meal like it was his move. His eyes light up as he hypes the flavor. In the land of death, he'd survived on nothing but vegetables. So now, every bite of meat, Alice frowned and demanded, "Is that meat really safe to eat?" In the land of the dead, that toxic air turned dragon meat into a deadly gamble. Theo promised it was safe, because his divine hoe had purified it and scrubbed the poison out clean. Theo leaned in and practically dared Alice to taste the meat, even as she hesitated. She took a bite and froze mid-chew like something hit her instantly. Have, swept up by the thunderous wings of wyverns. The rich, tender flavor hit her like a wave, drowning out everything else. And she stared in awe at how flawlessly it was prepared. Theo credited handed the May team the training Leela prepared for the dish's success. Curious? Alice leaned in and demanded to know everything about the team. Nearby, Layla barked orders at the maids, only letting the ones who met her test come forward to serve. And Theo couldn't shake. As the night dragged on, the Fenrir pups barreled in and dove straight into the feast. Lauren pays respects to Luna, showing up with an expensive bottle of wine. Ishikette hustled back in, refilling drinks for everyone. The Osat totally had everyone laughing, eating, and soaking up the fun like there was no tomorrow. Alice teased him for taking everything way too seriously, joking that he'd never grow taller unless he kept stuffing himself with more food. She rushed in with food, trying to get him to eat. But Leela cut in, snapping at Alice that skipping rest would stunt her growth. Alice snapped at Layla to keep her hands off the moment with Theo. But Layla thrust Theo Dragon Stew into Noringher's hands. Frustration crackled in Alice's voice as she clawed at Theo, snapping at Layla to back off. Layla grabbed Theo away, shouting that she was shielding the prince from every nuisance out there. And he'd already won his heart. Stunned and seething, Alice demanded the truth about their relationship, calling them brazen. Later, Alice finally understood the power of earning favor, but it didn't stop the hurt from still burning in her chest. Especially when the beast women get dragged into the mess. She shot back with zero fear, saying she'd be totally fine getting favored to CO2. shocking Theo, making him blush hard. Lila pressed a butter knife to Alice's throat, using it like she was holding power by the neck. Alice snapped and challenged Layla to a fight. Layla snapped back that fighting her would be like a kid trying to take on an adult. Alice shot a sharp remark and basically taunted Leela as if she were folding, then thanked her in the most exasperated, the barked for them to stomp. Meanwhile, Jack and the villager kept their eyes sharp, posted on the walls and ready for anything. Some villagers were begging for more dragon meat and Jack snapped back, warning them to stay sharp and watch for threats. Isha showed up like she could sense their hunger and thanked them for every single bit of effort. The villagers dropped to their knees and hailed her as their living goddess. She asked Jack to come with her, and he flat out refused. Sweat instantly broke out on him as he spotted something way too strange. In pure disbelief, Jack grabbed Isha and blurted for her to alert the team immediately. She rose up for the banquet, raising the alarm as another monster closes in. The Ostun leaned in and asked what it was, and Alicia fired back that it was just one lone monster. Theo thought one felt a wave of relief at first, like this was actually beatable, especially compared. Asha shot back and confirmed this wasn't just any creature, it was a mountain-sized giant turtle. The sweating old man couldn't even wrap his head around what it meant to face a Calamity-class monster. With his autocrat power, he conjured a white word out of iron and glass, and then scribbled a non-permanent marker using dye, water. Santa stared in shock as the pen spilled ink without him ever dipping it. Martina marvels at how the writing wipes everything away, almost like magic. She christened it the magic pen, and Santa nodded like it was fate. Then they finally got the green light to kick. Santa bowed and apologized first, then kicked off the formal debate about the adamant turtle. A calamity-level monster barreled toward the village, and by its speed it was set to smash into town. But Santa said, "It's named that for a reason." That adamant turtle was a colossal beast. Its shell tougher than the rare adamant mineral. Even with such a dark mission, Santa's sketches of the monster were weirdly adorable, so adorable that she broke down how the turtle slammed out a brutal mana blast, and when the crew saw her sketches, they laughed so hard they joked they wouldn't mind getting hit by it. Santa wiped the drawings clean in a snap, declaring the turtle's attack was their opening to hit back, and the others were crushed when she erased their plans, leaving Santa staring at her, totally puzzled. Theo braced himself and urged, "We have to keep going." Santa said the monster was only weak the moment it launched its attack. At that exact moment, she demanded they blast the magic cannon straight into its mouth, and her drawing turned savage, showing the turtle detonating from. She warned that striking from the inside was the key to bringing it down. Alice realized that even though Sona adored cute things, all that mercenary work had already. Thea caught on fast. She had to bait the turtles into attacking first. Sound nodded, but he made it clear there was zero guarantee that magic cannon would actually work, so as the turtles tore through the village, turning everything into rubble. Theo gave the nod to put the maid team in charge of the evacuation, then ordered the soldiers to brace. Everyone charges into action. Theo snaps a trap into place to slow the monster down. With his autocrat power, the ox-cavated earth burst out and he spiked the ground below to trap the turtle, then strengthened the village walls like his life depended on it, turning them into a giant rampart towering over everything. After squeezing out one last off-white burst, the O drained every drop of magic and crumpled to the ground, utterly spent. In that long, sleepy dawn, Hanaking woke up then froze, shocked to realize he was sprawled across Alice's lap. She told him she left him there on purpose, so the ground wouldn't pound his body and trigger brutal aches. After she crushed Layla in rock, paper, scissors, she smugly claimed the privilege. Allison pushed him to slow down and get more rest, pointing out how hard he'd been working on the trap. Ever since the ocean drain, Alice scooted in close and offered him her lap like, "You've done enough, so stay right here." Theo tried to slip away to work, but Alice softly tapped his shoulder and pushed him back to rest. She tore into him for pushing himself way too hard. A grim warning hit him hard. One more run of this could kill him. Boo sat there, guilt crashing down, then apologized for leaning on her help nonstop. Alice shot back, saying Theo had been her biggest help. The OASD win left me completely stunned. Alice called him completely oblivious. 8 years old, she still remembers the moment she was handed the hero's power. She told him how that power flipped her whole life because the hero's abilities were handed out to the right candidates. Alice, the diner owner's daughter, got knocked sideways by the fact that her life snapped onto a new track the moment she was dragged to the castle as a kid. She clenched her teeth and survived brutal training with grown-ups. Bite by bite, her trainer kept swinging at her, yelling that she had to grind her life away for the kingdom. Every hero who got power was shoved into the castle program. Alice dives headfirst into swordsmanship, learns deadly magic, and sharpens her battle tactics. But it wasn't real training at all, it was pure brainwashing, sculpting her into a walking weapon they called a hero. Young Alice wandered the castle corridors, lost in wonder. People hissed and murmured to each other, warning, "Stay on the hero's good side, don't make him notice you." She couldn't help but wonder, did they even know her enhanced hearing was catching every one of them? Alone in the garden, she muttered to herself that the castle was full of nothing but cold hearts. She finally clocked it, nobody had spoken her real name since she showed up. To them, she wasn't a person at all, just a so-called hero treated like a tool. She flashed back to her days as a tavern juror, laughing and serving happy patrons at her. Memories crushed his chest, dragging up silent tears and a fierce ache for the home she used to call her own. She couldn't stop thinking about Theo, the one who pulled her through those brutal times. He was the first to step up, say her real name like it mattered, and offer her a handkerchief to wipe away those. Alice felt the truth of her that she wasn't just a hero on a page, but a real person. So he stayed too shy to speak then. Now she needed to thank him from the bottom of her heart, because thanks to him, she could. Theo down brushed it off and said she was his only friend. While Alice laughed, Theo shot back that his mother was still in Galen. Abruptly, Alice snapped into a serious mood, then she pushed for them to act fast before she brought up the favor they'd been talking about the night before. Shyly leaned in and asked Theo, "Will you share it with me?" Stun hid, but Theo's couldn't land a reply. He was struggling just to respond. Blushing hard, he finally asked if Alice understood how the favor gets passed on, and she admitted she only stepped in because guilt crushed her. She couldn't stand the thought of Theo dying without. She pressed him, demanding to know if he was refusing. He finally admitted he figured she refused. Alice shot into space and snapped, Shut up!" without pause. She swooped in and shut him down with one hard push. Their teeth collided with a brutal crunch, pain shooting through them. But Alice didn't give up. She kept teaching him again, slower and way more carefully. After a quick breath, she rattles out his name again, one more sharp-keshed. Theo now had Quiche and 3 girls in his care. Alice's cheeks flared with a bright, unmistakable blush. While everyone else stayed quiet, she teased Theo, calling him a pervert because he was blushing hard, and he shot back that she looked like a boiled. Alice made it crystal clear. She wasn't after anything. She was only there to trade favors. Theo shillelagh thanked her. Alice froze for a beat, then blurted out a sincere apology for lying. She leaned in, and her touch sent him into a full-blown panic. Alice confessed she'd been dreaming of this exact moment with him for as long as she could remember. With a flush deeper than before, Alice rose and snapped that they were finished, for now. She told him, after the battle, keep going. Theo leaned in and demanded, "What do you mean by continue?" Alice snapped that he better make it out alive or her fury would hit, and that threat sparked his resolve. Theo swore he'd win right there with Aaron. When he said it, Alice's face lit up with joy. Soon the village gates stood like Titanper fortresses, built to stop those monsters cold. Leela hyped Theo up, swearing they had nothing to fear, while Alice snapped that Theo was Pete's memories came back, and Martina snapped into action she had to upgrade the magic cannon. Martina practically overflowed with excitement over the magic cannon, and Theo went on a passionate rant like he'd found the coolest. He snapped her attention to him, and it totally caught the mage off guard. He pressed for updates on how the upgrades were coming along. Martina swore her Theo's upgraded everything, pushing her range farther, her explosive power harder, and her she admitted she might have gone a little too far, but she also tinkered with the cans to squeeze in more magic sight shards. Martina warned that the surge could overload the thing and turn it into an explosion, and Thea just smirked, admitting she'd crafted it as a weapon. But still, he snapped his thanks to her, making it crystal clear that the cannon would decide the coming battle. Martina blushed hard. Thea sense spun and dodged him with ruthless speed. Luna suddenly showed up and started teasing Theo like the ultimate ladies' man. Theo swore everyone was just being kind. Luna snapped back that he was completely clueless. She snapped, "Are you okay?" Then added, "You don't need me to fight." Theo brought up Layla's warning about Luna's limited strength. Luna nodded and warned that if she let loose her divine power, it would summon an even nastier. Luna didn't just accept the assignment, she demanded answers, asking what the role only she could fill was when she was told to guard the villagers. She went deathly pale the moment she saw the massive wheeled house rolling toward her. Theo said that underground shelter wouldn't survive the adamant turtle, so he built a mobile refuge instead. He begged Luna to move it to safety, and the moment the turtle struck, she snapped into action, saying she swore she'd protect the villagers no matter what they asked her to do. The oath haunter. You're arriving to read the adamant turtle. Theo finally confessed his shaking nerves, and San got it because the two of them were about to collide head-on with a Calamity-class enemy. Theo couldn't believe it. Why would a creature so normally calm snap an attack? Only adamant turtles would strike, and they'd only do it when they were pushed to the edge. Santa dropped a major breakthrough for Martina's right on the spot. Martina crouched there, studying the wyverns up close. Young covered chilling traces of a mind control spell. Theo froze in shock. Santa all but guessed the earth dragons, and even that adamant turtle were enchanted too. Deer suddenly realized someone was hunting down his village on purpose. Santa pointed out that every mind control spell guzzled mountains of mana and demanded rare, priceless items, so only people with true cracking the adamant turtle drained ridiculous resources, and Senna couldn't shake the feeling the orchestrator wouldn't, hinting this could be the last monster showdown they'll ever face. Hitting play on Santa, the A recalled video games boss battles. He felt his racing heart hammering in his chest, not from fear, but from pure electric excitement. Even with Downs clawing at him, he couldn't wait for that clash. The adamant turtle lumbered straight for the village, inch by inch. The Ostad unleashes a magic cannon. Ready to unleash the colossal beast first. The turtles slammed down, and the ground ripped open beneath him with a thunderous roar. He went tumbling straight into a spike pit. The Ochard trap finally hits, and it works. He blasted the order. Every cannon opened fire. Cannonball slammed into the trap turtle and detonated with a brutal blast. Theo's relentless barrage just kept pounding until its mouth finally gaped wide for a long-range strike. Then he'd blast the magic cannon straight into its mouth, ripping it apart from the inside. The turtle lifted its legs. Scent barked a warning. Theo was already scrambling out. Theo gaped in disbelief, sure the pit would swallow him for much longer. But they had even more tricks locked and loaded. Alice and Layla braced herself, ready to spring into action. Layla leaned in and told Alice, loud and clear, that she wouldn't be a burden for her to carry. Alice snapped back hard, demanding who on earth Layla thought she was talking to. They lock in their stance and unleash their signature moves. Their attack hit as one, unleashing a gigantic X-shaped sword slash that tore through everything. It tore into the monster's body, slicing its front left leg and splashing blood everywhere. The girls shouted at the turtle to stay down. It dragged its injured leg through the pit and basically marked it as its own grave. The turtle crumpled and sank right back into the trap. Theo, buzzing with victory, barked at the soldiers to keep the barrage pounding. Then, once they got reloaded, the cannons roared back to life, battering the adamant turtle again and again. Finally, it pushed past the limit and couldn't take any more. It exploded with a thunderous roar that rattled everything around it. Sound roared that it was about to strike. And Theo could feel it. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. The turtle snapped its jaw wide and fired a brutal long-range blast. But he shockingly swung his aim downward straight at Alice and Layla. Nobody saw this coming. The oak couldn't hit its target at all, and now the girls were right in its line of fire. The girls felt the turtle's fury lock onto them like a warning shot. Alice cooked up a lightning-fast plan. He launched into the air, soaring high just to mock the beast. She slammed her sword into his chin. She blared a furious shout, demanding its attention. It flung its mouth wide for Theo's shot. But Alice was right in the magic cannon's blast path. Out of nowhere, Alice vanished without a trace. Theo gasped. Layla yanked her out of danger in a heartbeat. Alice stood there, and Layla instantly clocked the truth behind her move. Layla even admitted she was terrified Alice was about to unleash. Seizing the moment, Theo ripped the magic cannon's trigger. Its blast hit harder than ever before. So the shot they'd used on the Earth Dragons finally connected, and it hit dead on. And the adamant turtle roared from the inside, the boom getting louder and louder. A colossal beast slammed into the ground with a thunderous crash. Santa erupted in cheers as the turtle crashed down and claimed victory. Theo and the villagers burst into wild cheers, celebrating like the world had just been saved. Alice and Layla gave their sword hilt a sharp tap, and the respect between them snapped into the air. Santa couldn't believe it. She just watched them wipe out a Calamity-class monster. The O-Tank Sana crushed the battlefield with her razor-sharp strategy. She praised the team's grit and hauled their effort into the spotlight. Theo demanded where Alice and Layla had gone, and Santa jabbed at a rock. There were the girls standing in plain sight as they stared him. Theo couldn't stop wondering when they'd even made the move. Then Santa just pointed out how unbelievably fast they were. Then the turtle's eyes flashed with eerie life, like it had never really died. It erupted up from the ground like something waking up. The eel froze in shock somehow. It survived the magic cannon. Lala and Alice both stared in disbelief, amazed at just how tough it really was. The turtle screamed at the top of its lungs, thrashing in the pit like it could tear its way out. Thea realized it was getting cautious now, and she could almost feel it bracing itself, because its only play was to barrel into the village, a mountain of sheer weight crashing forward. Theos's reinforced wall shielded the village, yet doubt gnawed at him like it might not hold. If that wall crumpled, the soldiers would be killed. And if it went unchecked, the village would be destroyed. While the oaf scrambled for an answer, he noticed rubble shifting under the monster's weight. He snapped his fingers and called the Fenrir pups by name. They swooped in fast, like a sudden storm. So, he asked for a favor? Passing each note into the right hand so it could reach Luna and Aisha. At the same time, he grabbed Silk and demanded she carry him under the turtle. Sana, all nerves, demanded to know what he was planning, and Theo snapped that she needed to run the show. With zero explanation, he vanished, Silk in hand. Sana, without a puzzle to solve, he walked out. Felt, deep in his bones, that the real victory wasn't what the crowd saw it, was what he carried inside. She finally understood why her leader trusted him so fiercely. Alice locked onto one of the giant turtle's legs and unleashed her heroic skills with ruthless intensity. Layla lunged and slammed her strike into another of her legs. No matter how hard they fought, their strikes barely nicked the enemy at all. They couldn't grab the turtle in time, and it somehow squirmed free, crawling right out of the pit. Alice fumed as that massive beast kept shrugging off every hit, and Layla snapped that their attacks were basically just as they tried to move. The stubborn turtle snapped into action, twisting and shifting like it was about to bite or swallow. Still, that wasn't the real plan behind it. Instead, it snapped its jaws wide, ready to unleash yet another earth-shattering explosion. The girls instantly got it. This turtle wasn't playing nice. It was planning to blow its. Leela realized it had to be a genius move. The turtle's brutal shell and healing would shrug off the magic, and it kept it. Alice knew beating a turtle that tricky wouldn't be easy. Layla yanked Alice back hard. They realized they had to bolt fast, and she told Alice to stand guard as she carried her, and Alice nodded along, still unsure they'd make it out before time ran out. Then Theo burst in out of nowhere and screamed at them, "Duck!" With sheer autocraft skill, he slammed the earth open and forged a gigantic spear. The turtles shoved every ounce of energy into their bodies and then erupted like a storm. It pushed its mouth too far, then boom. Its own blast exploded, tearing itself up. Theo beamed and yelled to the girls, demanding to know if they were safe. The girls were fuming, demanding to know why Theo was out there on the front lines, risking everything. He said the adamant turtle got smarter and even more cautious, and that's why the magic cannon couldn't land a thing. Then he let it slip. He'd found a whole new way to beat it. After staring that creature down in close detail, he leaned in and told the girls to check the turtles right under their bellies. The girls finally spotted hairline cracks spidering across its shell. Theo was convinced the magic cannon smashed the ground and carved those fractures. Alice finally got it. She understood exactly what it would take. Theo grabbed her attention and told her to wait. He knew Alice was their deadliest fighter, but he still didn't think she could crush that. Othan unveiled the deadly plan he'd cooked up. After he mapped it all out, Theo's plan puts the girls on high alert. They can see every risk coming. Alice also realized their crew was way too small to pull it off. Daria steadied their nerves and swore help was already racing toward them. At that exact moment, Luna burst in, panting and apologizing for being late. Luna told everyone that the villagers were safe with Gorm watching over them. She told him she'd read Theo's letter and was blown away by his genius ideas, and Theo fired back with heartfelt thanks for her showing. Layla snapped at Luna, reminding her how little she could fight, and then she demanded to know what use she was in the first place. Luna finally confessed that she was trapped by her current limits. She said she brought Sana along to help, and Theo couldn't stop himself seeing Sana lit him up. Santa grumbled like a storm, still steamed about how they treated her so rough. When Santa finally showed up, Alice breathed a little easier only to realize they still had one missing guest. Theo leaned in and promised her the final piece was already handled. He spun toward the giant turtle and declared it was time to fire up their ultimate plan.